Welcome to this lesson on how to play Blackbird by the Beatles. This classic tune should be under the fingers of all players, beginners to advanced. I'm going to be breaking the song down into sections. I'll demonstrate how to play each section, then I'll slow things down, give you some tips and considerations for playing each. Finally, I'll show you how to put all the pieces together so you can play the song start to finish. There will be on-screen tabs and sheet music throughout the lesson, but I'll also link the full score below. Let's get started. All right, so first thing I want to do is talk about the right hand picking pattern, or if you're a left-handed player, your left hand, it's your picking hand. There's several different ways to pick this tune, all of which honestly sound great. Technically, of course, there is a right way to play this. And you can see here in this video of Paul McCartney performing it, that he has kind of an interesting pattern that you don't often see. And it's a very kind of folky style is the way I think of it, where he will actually do a hybrid of picking and strumming all with his index finger. Something like this. Now, in my version of the tune, I don't play it like that, and there's a couple of reasons. For me personally, I find it a little awkward, and that's not to say that it's a bad method or a bad way to play it. I mean, obviously it worked for Paul McCartney, so no room to argue there. But for me personally, when I'm playing the tune, I find it's a bit of a barrier. Now, you can, of course, practice it and get better. I could practice it more and get better. But really for me, it kind of leads into the second reason why I don't prefer this method. And it's that because I play classical guitar, I leave my fingernails long. And whenever I do those strums, to me, they kind of stick out a little too much. So if you don't have long fingernails like I do, I think that your strums might sound better than mine and would kind of fit in better with that kind of droning strumming sound that Paul McCartney gets in the original recording and in that live clip that I showed you. So the way that I play this tune is I actually will do all of it kind of finger style or finger picking. And most of it is just alternating the played left hand notes and the open G string. So everything that I'm playing that Paul McCartney would be like strumming, it's just all played on that G string. So I'm gonna do a quick demonstration here. So I'll just do the intro. The way that I approach the right hand picking in this song is something like this. And my goal with it is to kind of emulate that strumming pattern. And you kind of have this kind of groove going, I guess, for lack of a better term. And you get that feel with the strumming. It'd be kind of like, kind of that feel. But I just use alternating on this open G. So I've heard folks simplify this even further, and it sounds great, especially if you're singing along with it. That way you don't have such a busy guitar part. It goes something like this. One thing that all of those right-hand picking patterns have in common is they keep the thumb going. It's kind of the pulse, the beat of the song. So as long as you have that going, whatever picking pattern you're doing is going to sound really good. All right, let's move on to the first section. So the very first section that we're going to be working on actually covers almost all of the material in the song. So that's going to be the intro, the verse, the little extension between the first and second verse, and the breaks that come later in the song. So I'm going to start with the intro, and I'll just play that for you really quick here. So I'll play that nice and slow here. A few points to consider with this, one being fingering, particularly for this part right here, this chord. One thing I've seen a few people do is that, or even that. That's a little awkward. I prefer this fingering, mostly because A, it's comfortable, and B, when you do the slide up to here, it kind of puts you in a good position. And that actually brings me on to my next point. The next kind of consideration would be when doing this slide, it's a long slide, and especially on an acoustic guitar where you've got heavier strings, that can be pretty hard on your fingers. So just be sure that you're not adding any extra pressure when doing this slide. You don't need to push harder to slide. Just keep the same amount of pressure that you have and slide up to that 10th fret here. So for the verse, we're actually playing all of the same stuff from the intro, but we're adding on some stuff. Actually, we're adding on quite a bit of stuff. I'll go ahead and play that now, and then we'll walk through it. So starting with the newest material, we have this. And that can be a bit tricky, getting this kind of leap for your first finger to go from the A string here to the E string. Just make sure to practice it nice and slow. Another thing, if you're finding this to be particularly difficult, especially if you have smaller hands, is that your thumb isn't creeping over the edge of the fingerboard here. So you got it kind of back here and relaxed. And you also have your wrist in such a way that will allow your fingers to be, for the most part, perpendicular to the strings. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but, it makes it a lot more difficult if you have your hand like this to play that stretch. Make sure that you've got it kind of, I think of it as kind of like supporting, like you're holding up something. You're not actually holding up the guitar, but it's kind of a supportive hand position where you've got your wrist underneath your fingers somewhat. And then we move on to this. And I actually will slide my first finger down from this position. I've seen some folks play that. If that is how you'd like to play it, works great. And then we have another one of those stretches. And then we're going to slide this whole shape down. I'm going to play open A with that C sharp there. So that whole sequence of events there will be something like this. Great. Now moving on to the extension. So this is the little bit of music that kind of happens in between the first two verses. It kind of acts almost like a turnaround, if you're familiar with that term. It's common in blues and in jazz music. And it basically just kind of, it helps kind of wrap up the idea and then lead you back to the beginning of a section, like a verse. So what we actually have there, and I'll actually play it kind of in context going from the verse here. So it will go like this. comes the extension. So it's actually kind of also similar, if not the same material that we've already played. So it goes. All right, so this material comes back throughout the song. There's a couple of sections that I will cover later on, just because they kind of occur later in the tune. Those being the breaks and the coda at the very end. So moving on to the second section here, this is the bridge. I'm gonna go ahead and play it really quick. In this section, we're just kind of taking two different shapes and just scooting them on down the neck. So starting up here on the 8th fret, we have this. I'm going to scoot down 1 fret. We're going to play this. I'm going to scoot down 2 frets. Play that same shape. I'm going to scoot down another 2 frets. Play this shape. We're going to scoot down another 2 frets. Play this shape. And then we're going to scoot back up 2 frets just to grab this. So in sequence, you should have all right, and you repeat that. And on the second time, we have kind of the same material from the extension that we learned in section 1. So I'll just play this as if I'm playing the repeat. So. And then I'm going to play this. So again, in sequence, that's just going to be. Right, so moving on to the third section, the breaks, these are played after each of the bridge sections in this song. The first break, though, it's exactly the same as the verse, so we're not going to get into it just because we already broke that down. But the second break, it's all familiar material, but it's played a little bit differently than we've heard it anywhere else in the tune. So I'm just going to play that really fast. So, as you may have recognized, I'm actually just playing the intro on that first kind of bit there. But then I'm hanging out up here for a bit. Now this would be a good opportunity if you're playing the finger picking style like I am to kind of throw in some variation. So since you're hanging out up here, might be worth trying out the kind of Paul McCartney strumming. You can actually hear it a little bit more in the original recording. It gets a little bit looser there. You can actually kind of hear the strumming a little bit more. Something kind of like that. So after that section, we kind of come back down here and play it's like an extended version of the extension, if that makes any sense. So it goes like this. So it's just like the intro. And instead of sliding all the way up here, we're just going to slide up to the 3rd fret. And then we're going to go back down here, play that. So again, kind of slow. just like that. On to our fourth and final section, the coda. And this comes at the end of the last verse, and it basically just functions to extend that last verse to wrap up the song really nicely. And again, like everything else, it seems, it's borrowing from that first section. So particularly the extension that we learned in section 1. So I'll just play that really quick. All right, so just like in the extension, we have the same thing going. That material is repeated twice, and then it just ends on that G. Just one more time, slow here. Kind of like that. So. So now that we've learned all of the sections, it's time to piece the tune together. From the first section, we learned the intro, the verse, and the extension. So the first part of the tune, it goes intro, verse, extension, and then another verse. Now in the second section, we learned the bridge. So this next part is bridge, then a break, which, as I mentioned before, is the exact same thing as the verse, followed by another bridge. From section 3, we learned that extended break, which we'll put right after the second bridge. And then we're going to play another verse, followed by the coda from section 4. So if you were to play the whole song in order, it'd lay out something like this. I have each of those sections outlined in the score linked below, so be sure to download that. Thank you so much for joining me on this lesson of Blackbird. It is one of the most fun tunes to play, and I hope this has helped you get it underneath your fingers. I'm looking forward to doing more videos like this, so if you like what you saw, stay tuned. Until then, keep picking, keep grinning.